Have you ever been in a situation where you would have called somebody on the phone, but for fear of stuttering or blocking, you sent them a text instead? Or have you ever been invited to a social event where last minute you decided not to go, you canceled, again due to fear of stuttering? Or to make this super specific and small, have you ever avoided a specific word when you were approaching that word, or you felt like your brain latched onto it and so you went around it, or you didn't say it, or you just replaced it with another word? Most people who have ever stuttered, myself included, have replaced words many, many, many times. Now, this isn't 100% of the time a bad thing, but we'll get into the details of that later. So if you are engaged up to this point, then this video is for you because I want to really help you understand the dangers of avoidance and what to do about avoidance, because avoidance really is the silent killer. Avoidance will keep you from becoming fluent if you let it. Okay, so we need to talk about this because obviously we don't want to stutter the rest of our lives. We want to build some fluency. So let's talk about it. So the first thing we need to talk about is how the brain interprets avoidance. What I mean by this is, let's go back to the earlier example that I started with, where you would have made a phone call, but out of fear of stuttering, you decided to just text the person the information. Well, because you went into that interaction or that exchange with, you would have called them, right? You would have used the phone and called them up. And so what is happening there is you avoided a situation that you wanted to do, and you replaced it with something else. And what that does is that makes your brain interpret calling people on the phone as dangerous, as threatening, as something that your brain should be afraid of, because that's what you are telling your brain. See, this is why avoidance is so destructive, or at least you could say really large scale avoidance. If you're always avoiding things, it becomes destructive to any fluency you're trying to build, because when you avoid things left and right, your brain believes you, and your brain takes that information as, oh, you must, obviously you're a smart person. This is how your brain thinks. Your brain's like, well, obviously you're a smart, intelligent person. You're avoiding that for a reason. Therefore, I should build a lot of fear and anxiety about that thing because that might kill us, apparently, with the way you're avoiding it. So then, see, that's how anxiety habits then build. That's how fear habits are built, is when we avoid things that we are afraid of. Now, another little quick thing on how the brain interprets avoidance is, let's take this all the way down to specific words. So if you are speaking and let's say the word that's coming up, let's say I was talking with my friend about music and the history of music, and I wanted to say 70s music. Let's say that is the word I wanted to use, is 70s. And S's have probably been my most problematic consonant over the years. And so I'll use that as my example here. What I might do is, if we're talking about it and my brain's like, okay, I want to say 70s music, but instead I'll maybe say something that's less clear or that doesn't make as much precise sense. And I'll be like, yeah, music from back in the day, or music that was 60 years ago. Wait, how long ago was the 70s? 54 years ago, 50 years ago, something like that. Yeah, anyway, right. So I might just say, and I might just use a different word instead of saying 70s music. Now, I will give you a little tip here, in that there is a point where you can have your cake and eat it too, kind of. Here's what I mean. If I want to say 70s music, but I feel like I'm truly going to get stuck on that S, on 70s. What I could do is, yes, avoid it for the time being, replace it with maybe music from back in the day or music 50 years ago. But then what you want to do when that happens, as often as possible, is before you're done talking, slip that word in. So that would be like if me and my buddy again are talking about music, I might be like, yeah, music back in the old days, music like 50 years ago had this certain sound and it was a very 70s kind of sound. See, I found a way towards the end, maybe when I got a bit more comfortable and my brain wasn't as latched onto that S or that word 70. And it's kind of psyching me out here because I keep thinking about stuttering on S, so it's actually making this a bit more difficult. But I'm getting through it. But that's an example there, and that's what you want to try to do, where it can be okay to avoid a block that feels almost inevitable, that feels like it's going to happen if you keep pushing. And so what you can do is, yes, you can reroute for a second or two. And then, but then you want to still try to not leave it as an avoided situation. Instead, you want to see if you can find a slot before you're done talking to get that word out of your system, to kind of prove to yourself that at least you don't stutter on that word every time. So that's just a little insider tip for the sort of intricacies of avoidance when it comes to particular words. It's not always bad. You can do it sometimes. Over the long term, you want to do it less and less. That's where I'm at, right? But there are still times where I will still avoid words now and then. But when it happens, it does bother me because I don't want that to become an avoidance pattern. And so I always try to get that word out at some point after, just to kind of ground myself and prove to myself that I can say that word fluently. Okay, so anyway, let's move on to the next topic here, which is exposure therapy, but start small. This is what you need to do to rise above avoidance and the tendency to avoid things you're afraid of. Now, I talked in depth about exposure therapy last week, so go watch that video if you haven't already, and I will link to that below. Lord help me remember to put it in a link below. I swear 85% of the videos that I've watched on YouTube, when they say the links below, it never is, because they forget about it when they upload the video. So if I do forget, just leave a comment, help me out. But the next thing here is exposure therapy, but start small. As I described last week, there's a very easy definition for exposure therapy. And that definition is this: you expose yourself to things that scare you. It's that simple. You put yourself out there. You turn on that anxiety, or you allow that anxiety and those fears to be turned on a little bit. Not crazy, but just enough to where you can definitely feel it. And then you want to put yourself in those situations so that you can conquer them and slowly build up your ability to master the different, specifically social situations that you want to be fluent in or confident in, or both. Right? So that is what exposure therapy is. But again, you want to start small. As I described last week again, if your threshold is here, this is where your comfort level is, you're comfortable here. As soon as you get above this line here, this threshold, that's when you start to feel that anxiety. So what you want to do is not look for things that are way up here, crazy, like this giant Goliath above you. You're going to come crashing down most likely if you try to conquer those right off the bat. You want to start with the things that are slightly above your current comfort level. And this might be as simple as making that phone call instead of sending the text. It starts very, very small. But that's exposure therapy, because there's a little bit of fear and anxiety attached to that thing. And whatever that is, right? So that's exposure therapy. Again, we talked about this last week, so go watch that video if you haven't already. Now, the next topic we want to touch on here are exceptions. Exceptions to the rule. There can be exceptions where, especially early on in the process, where sometimes a little bit of avoidance is okay. And a silly analogy that I like to use is, when it comes to avoidance, sometimes you need to make exceptions, because it's kind of like if you're in the desert and you're literally starving. If I hand you a McDonald's cheeseburger, that's not a healthy food. Just eat the damn cheeseburger. Sometimes Sometimes there are exceptions where, yes, it's not healthy food, but I'm dying over here, so give me the cheeseburger and I'll eat it, right? So there are these exceptions where it is okay to have a little avoidance. Sometimes it's okay to avoid that word. Sometimes it's okay to avoid a an interaction. You can make exceptions, and I'm not gonna fault you for that, so long as it doesn't become the rule. That's where you'll get in trouble. When avoidance becomes a rule, when it becomes the norm, that will always get you in a ton of trouble, and it will keep you from achieving fluency. All right, now I still have an important point I want to touch on before we wrap up the video, but before we do that, I want to let you in on a little secret. It's not really a secret, but it's my Stop Stuttering workshop, and that's better than a secret because this gives you the plan, the daily routine, and the system to help you overcome stuttering. And guess what? It's 100% free. So I will leave a link in the description if you have not watched it, or maybe you have watched it before, but you've lost your way, or you haven't had a sort of routine and a system to follow. Get back on that track. This is your chance to do it. The link is in the description. Go watch the Stop Stuttering workshop before you leave this video. Okay. All right. Now to bring this home, I want to touch a little bit on how, when you rise above avoidance, how it helps you to become a more confident person. So as you are building this awareness, to go back to the beginning of understanding how your brain interprets avoidance, so you become aware of, oh, if I avoid things a lot, then my brain is going to translate that as threatening, as dangerous, and therefore my anxiety is going to skyrocket. It's going to get worse and worse. So, okay, so now I know that, and that's important to know that. That's awareness. It's very important. And then with that awareness, it makes you a little bit like a bit of healthy fear with, I don't want my anxiety to shoot through the roof. I don't want to avoid all the time. So what do? Exposure therapy. You expose yourself to things that scare you, to things you're afraid of. Slowly but surely, nothing crazy, just slowly. Just try to find those things that are just above your comfort level and that turn on that anxiety a bit. There's a little Python phrase that is often used, which is called activate to generate. If you want to generate the change in anxiety, if you want to rewire the anxiety, you have to first activate the anxiety itself, okay? So you need to get above the threshold of comfort, or at least I guess that would be a way to describe it that could be misunderstood, but you need to get above the damn threshold and find things that make you feel a little anxious. Make sure it's turned on. That's when you can change it, okay? And when, or as you expose yourself to situations that scare you, as you engage in exposure therapy, you start to get these little hits of confidence. And let me tell you, it's so powerful. When you start to get these hits of confidence from this process of not avoiding things, of actually using this exposure therapy, it changes your life in so many ways. Now you can socialize confidently with people. Now you don't have to have this constant feeling or look of insecurity when you're talking with people, or overly awkwardness about, like, no, you can just engage, and you don't have to be so absorbed in your own problems or your own stutters or your own blocks or your own anxieties. No, like, you have confidence now. You can rise above all that stuff. And this is what happens when you stop avoiding things and you start to use exposure therapy to build these pockets, or to build these little hits, as I call them, of confidence. You need to get those hits, and it takes time, but eventually you'll get there, so long as you stay the course and you keep moving towards that place of excellence, as that place of mastery. As I always say, mastery, that is the best cure, or that's the best approach you can take. Because if you can just master your speech in as many ways as possible, overcoming stuttering is a byproduct of that. That's gonna come along for the ride. So, my friend, thank you for watching this video. Really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found this useful. Again, go watch my free Stop Stuttering workshop before you leave. It is 100% free. This gives you the daily system, the daily routine, the plan. It gives you everything you need to get you a practice plan. It's like my Fitbod app for going to the gym. I've been doing a lot better with going to the gym this year. And a big reason is because I have a system and a plan in place. I have Fitbod. It's a great app. And no, I'm not getting paid to say that, but I'm just using that as an example where I have something I use that is user-friendly, that makes sense, that works. Like I know what I'm supposed to do. That is what the Stop Stuttering workshop gives you. Okay? It gives you that plan. So go check it out. It is in the description below. I'll see you over there, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, see you later.